On last Sunday, we began a series of sermons from Acts chapter 27 titled Shipwrecked. From this series of sermons, it is my prayer that we will learn that even when contrary winds are blowing against the ship of our lives, that we can trust God to keep us safe, even if he allows our ship to become wrecked. Let me give you the Cliff Notes version of last Sunday's message. The Apostle Paul was on his way to Rome to stand before Caesar. Paul had already appeared before the Roman governor named Festus, where he appealed to him to send him to Caesar. While waiting on his trip to Rome, Festus talked with the Judean king named Agrippa and his wife named Bernice about Paul's case. And King Agrippa asked to have Paul brought before him in order to hear him. After hearing the personal testimony of Paul, of how he once persecuted the church, and after his explanation to Agrippa of who Jesus was according to the Old Testament prophets, King Agrippa said to Paul, "Do you think that in a short time you can persuade me to be a Christian?" So Paul and some of the other prisoners were handed over to a centurion named Julius, and they set sail on the first leg of their trip to Rome. Their first stop was a port named Sidon. And the Bible said that as a kindness to Paul, Julius allowed Paul to go and visit some of his friends in Sidon so that they may provide for his needs. And I said to you on last Sunday that we ought to thank God for favor. Even though Paul was in the custody of Julius, God allowed him to find favor in the eyes of Julius. And I told you that God can cause you and I to find his favor even amongst those who are supposed to be against us. And I also said, I thank God that favor ain't fair. After visiting his friends, the Bible says that they set out on the second leg of their trip to Rome. But the Bible said that the winds were against them, and they ended up having to stop at a port named Myra. And I asked the question, have you ever experienced a time in your life when it felt like nothing but contrary winds were blowing against the ship of your life? I warned us that just because you and I are Christians does not exempt us from having contrary winds blow in our lives. And I said that Jesus said it like this: in this life, you will have some trouble. But he also said, be of good cheer, for I have overcome the world. The Bible says that the centurion named Julius found another ship that was going to Rome and put Paul and the other prisoners on board. The Bible said that they had difficulty sailing on this boat to Rome because, again, the wind was against them. So the Bible said that they went into a port called Fair Havens. And since much time had been lost at sea due to the contrary winds, Paul warned Julius that it was not good for them to continue on their journey to Rome. Paul, in essence, told them that the season wasn't right. And I said to those who were present, watching, and listening, that you may possibly want to check your season. I said this may not be the right time for you to set your ship a sail. You may be too much in a hurry to get to the place that you think you need to be without considering that you are temporarily in the place that you need to be. And I said that there were some of us who wish that we wouldn't have sailed out of our place of safety the time that we did. And I gave an example. I said some of us have left some safe relationships thinking that the grass was greener on the other side, and we found out the grass on the other side was nothing but weeds. The Bible says that Paul warned them not to set a sail, but they refused to listen. Paul was God's servant, and he warned them not to leave. And then I asked the question, what man or woman of God has warned you not to sail off into the deep, and you refuse to listen to their godly counsel? The owner of the ship, the captain, and the centurion failed to listen to Paul, and they sailed out of the port because the Bible said that a gentle south wind began to blow. And I warned you, don't be fooled. Why? Because winds are subject to change. Just because things are going well in your life right now does not indicate that things will always go well. Well, this brings us up to our selected scriptural text for today. The Apostle Paul has already warned the owner of the ship and the centurion not to sail to Rome at this time of the season. But they refused to listen to Paul. So they set out to continue their voyage and ran into contrary winds. Somebody say contrary winds. The winds were so strong that they had to pull the lifeboat on deck and lower the sea anchor of the ship. And the Bible says that the wind drove the boat violently along. Luke writes in verse 18 that the ship took such a violent battering from the storm that on the next day the sailors began to throw the ship's cargo overboard. And on the third day, they threw the ship's tackle overboard, and the Bible says it like this: with their own hands. From these events, we learn an important lesson. And the lesson is this: sometimes doing all that you can do is not enough to quell the storm. Let me say that one more time. Sometimes doing all that you can do is not enough to quell the storm. What are you saying, Pastor Wood? I am saying that you can do all you can do in your own power to try to survive the storm in your life, and you can still become shipwrecked. Now, I know that there are persons who are here watching or listening on the phone who could testify that they have had some storms in their lives that they did everything they could do in their own power, but the storm continued raging. You know what they discovered, and some of us discovered? We discovered that we're not in control like we think we are. Can we be honest with each other? Some of us have bought into the erroneous theology that just because we are children of God, that God has to answer all of our prayers in the positive. We feel that God should never tell us no or wait. We think that if we name it and claim it, it's going to come. But I stopped by to tell you that God does not work like that. Sometimes God will allow us to remain in a storm, and sometimes even allow our life ship to wreck in order for us to develop the faith that we need to trust him in all times and in every situation. Am I right about it? The Bible says that the sailors used their own hands to throw the ship's tackle overboard during the storm. Fred, they did all they knew how to do to try to lighten their load through the storm. But guess what? It did not work. Listen to me good. Boy, it's got quiet in here. There will be some storms that you will encounter in this thing called life, that all of your efforts to survive on your own will not work. If you are going to survive the storm, you must totally, somebody say totally, depend upon God and his power to keep you in and through the storm. The Bible says that when neither sun nor stars appeared for many days, and the storm continued raging, the writer says we finally gave up all hope of being saved. And let me say right here that when things in your life and in my life seem to continue to rage for the worse, it is easy for us to become filled with hopelessness and even say to ourselves, I'm going to give up. When you and I can't see through the darkness that surrounds our lives, and when there is no light to be found, we are subject to throw in the towel. But I stopped by New Providence to tell somebody to hold to God's unchanging hand. Build your hopes on things eternal, and not only what you see or what you feel in the natural. Hold, somebody say hold, to God's unchanging hand. Now I know that it seems so dark in your life, but remember that Jesus is the light of the world, and that if he's on your ship with you, he's going to bring you to safe passage. In other words, if Jesus is near, you can survive the storm even if he allows you to shipwreck. Oh. Well, as I close this sermon today, the Bible says that the Apostle Paul stood up before them and said, men, you should have taken my advice not to sail from Crete. Then you have spared yourself this damage and loss. But now I urge you to keep up your courage. Why, Paul? Because not one of you will be lost. Only the ship will be destroyed. Lord, have mercy. In other words, Paul is telling them that I know things are looking mighty bad right now. I know it appears that we are in a hopeless situation. I know that most of you are fearing about the loss of your lives as a result of this storm. But I have some good news to tell you. We're going to make it. Did you hear what Paul told them? We're going to make it. So don't give up. Don't give out. Don't quit on life, because we're going to make it. And I stopped by new providence to let us know that the Lord said we're going to make it. And guess what? You and I have already come through some storms that we thought were going to take us out. But God allowed us to weather the storms and kept us alive, even though some of our ships wrecked. Lord have mercy. Let me explain it like this. Some of us have gone through some marriage storms, and we did everything that we thought we knew how to do to try to save the marriage. But we ended up wrecked in divorce. But guess what? We are still here, alive and thriving. The person we thought that we could count on, the person who we thought would always be our friend, stopped calling and hanging out with us, and now treats us like we are dead. But guess what? We are still here. And God has sent new friends, new relationships into our lives. Somebody has come through a medical storm. We were told that there's cancer in our body. We were told that we had COVID. We were told that we have a life-threatening condition. But on this fourth Sunday in 2024, we can testify that we are still here. God is keeping us alive. And because God has been so good to all of us, I don't know about you, but I will bless the Lord at all times. His praises shall continually be in my mouth. Can I get you to help me? Come magnify the Lord with me. Let us exalt his name together. Is there anybody? Is there anybody here who is not ashamed to say thank you to the Lord for all he has done? Lean over and tell your neighbor, you're going to make it. You're going to make it. We're going to make it. Stand to your feet.